Good afternoon, good evening, or good morning. Okay, so this is our last and final topic, how to create a research proposal. For Wesleyan, we have 5 chapters, but for a proposal, you just need chapter 1, 2, and 3. To begin, for the background of the study, these are the contents, and we will go through them one by one. For the introduction, this is what you should include. You should discuss what the study is about, the research gap. When we say research gap, these are the things that are unknown that you want answered, what your study is about, and why you want to take up the study. So the reason or the rationale. So a good introduction should be at least 2 to 3 pages. For the statement of the problem, it consists of one general statement and multiple objectives. Okay? For qualitative papers, you don't call it statement of the problem, but instead we call it statement of purpose or purpose of the study. For your theoretical or conceptual framework, you have to choose only one. It's either you get a theoretical or a conceptual framework. When we say theoretical, it is based on a theory. Okay, it should be related to your study. For example, you want to understand the physical needs. So, for example, the nutrition. If your topic is nutrition, that is a physical need or biophysical need, a good theory would be Maslow's hierarchy of needs. For conceptual framework, this is the time that you create your own framework, your own concept. It includes your independent and dependent variables. Situated below, in the form of boxes, on the left side, are your dependent variables. Those are the ones that are manipulated or controlled, while the independent variables are those that stand alone. In our introduction, we already discussed the difference between the two. For your conceptual framework, there are different symbols that you can use, such as the following. The square or a rectangle, you write down the variables inside. The triangle could be used depending on the shape where the triangle points to. That means it yields to or it results to. For the circle, that would be at the end of your framework. That means your topic shows effects or results. A straight line indicates description, while a broken line means there's no relationship. While a double-arrowed line means that you're trying to convey that two variables have a relationship. For the hypothesis, this is only used for quantitative studies. This is what you want to prove or disprove in your study. Usually, we use the null hypothesis, which is listed as H sub O, meaning to negate the idea. It's always in the positive. For example, there is no, there is none, there. The opposite of the null hypothesis is called the alternative hypothesis, which is symbolized by H sub 1 or H sub A. For example, for H sub O, there is no significant difference between IQ and EQ. For the affirmative, it would be there is a significant difference between IQ and EQ. So sometimes, usually, difference denotes cause and effect. So these are descriptive studies, while a relationship are correlational studies. Okay. This is only for quantitative studies. For your scope and limitation, when you write it down, there should be one paragraph for scope and one paragraph for limitation. So for the scope, it should include the 5 W's. The who, what, when, where, why, and how of the study. Okay. The limitation could either be time constraint of the researcher, the budget of the researcher, and the availability of the respondent. Because sometimes not all the time will your respondent be available for you to interview them. So that is a limitation on your part. For the significance of the study, they should be able to tell the audience or the reader why your study is significant or why it is important, why it is necessary to conduct the study. Okay. It should be presented in hierarchical form from general to specific. For example, since you are students of Wesleyan, we have to inform Wesleyan why it is necessary, how it will benefit Wesleyan, and then as graduate school students, if you work in the hospital, if you are a nurse, a medical practitioner, or a doctor, and then who are your clientele? It's either patients or students if you're an educator. And then lastly would be for future researchers. For the definition of terms, as I've mentioned before, there are two types. The conceptual definition is those definitions found in the dictionary, while operational is how you use the word in your study. They are different because, for example, in the example given below, the student, okay, for conceptual, if you look in the dictionary, a student is defined as a person who is studying at a school or college. While for the operational, you can define student as those students enrolled in third-year college of the nursing program of Wesleyan University, Philippines. All the time or always, we have to use the operational definition. So what do we define? Those words that are found in the title, all the variables used, all the variables found in your conceptual framework, and then regularly mentioned words that are talked about in the study, especially if they are non-layman's terms. For Chapter 2, or Review of Related Literature, this is presented thematically, okay? Based on the themes of your paper, for example, you want to discuss physical needs of students in the elementary school. So you have to define first what are needs. So that's a theme, needs. After that, what are specific needs? So physical. And then, yeah, sometimes there are times that the themes can be mixed together or you don't separate them. So physical needs of students, physical needs of elementary students. Okay. This is actually where you will find your research gap. That's the reason why we have to conduct this, to prove to the audience again that your problem is worth studying. Okay. The sources, again, there are two sources, primary and secondary. When we say primary, these are from interviews because these are the direct quotations directly taken from your participants. While secondary have already been passed on. So they are from books, journals, articles. After your RRL, you have to end with a one-page synthesis of all literature found. The first paragraph, you should specify all those topics or authors who are in favor of your topic. The second paragraph should be those that are oppose your topic. And then another paragraph for to compare your first and second paragraph. You will use terms such as however, moreover, according to, but despite that, those types of conjunctions. And then at the last paragraph should be your own conclusion regarding the literature, and again to prove the research gap. Lastly is the methodology. Okay, that's for your proposal. So these are the contents. Okay, so for the design, you only can choose two, quantitative or qualitative. However, there's another design called mixed methods wherein we combine quantitative or qualitative. Okay, so for quantitative, I've already listed down what you can use. So if it's experimental, you have just to choose whether it's a true experimental or quasi-experimental design. What's the difference? If it's a true experimental design, all these three components are met. Randomization, meaning you choose randomly your participants. Manipulation means you have to manipulate the variables. For example, if you want to interview them only at night, or if you want to include only females, so there. And then for control, it's a little bit similar to your manipulation, but you have to specify that who you want to test. There is one test group, there is one control group. Okay. For quasi-experimental, the only category it meets is manipulation. Okay. For non-experimental, you can choose among the three. Descriptive, you just have to describe. Correlational, if you want to prove a relationship. And longitudinal, if I have to specify what type of study you want to produce. For qualitative, these are your choices: descriptive, phenomenology, grounded theory, and ethnography. So for descriptive, once again, you just have to describe the study you just describe what you're trying to study. For phenomenology, you look for the lived experiences. For grounded theory, this time you have to create your own theory. You have to prove in cases that some phenomenon that are unknown, you have to prove it. And then for ethnography, this is more of an immersion based study wherein you study a culture or a ethnic group. Okay. For your local, this is where you will conduct the study. So in terms of hierarchy, depending where you are located, you start at the barangay level, city or municipal level, provincial level, regional, nationwide, and international. Of course, it would be easier to start from the barangay level. So depending on your panel and depending where you're located, you should choose your local based on importance. For population sample and sampling technique, the population is the entire subject that you intend to study. For example, doctors of Bay Point Medical Center. So, all the doctors residing in Bay Point Medical Center. Now, for sample, you just want to get a portion of that population. So, for Bay Point, you only select maybe only the cardio doctors. Okay. There are two types of sampling. We have the probability and non-probability sampling. We will discuss. For probability sampling, this is called random sampling. There are different types of random sampling. We have simple, systematic, stratified, multi-stage, and cluster. For example, random sampling, everybody has a chance to be selected as part of the sample. So if in a class of 42, I can just get anyone there. If it's simple random, similarly, I will just select, for example, I will get anyone I see that's simple. Okay, then systematic, I will ask, okay, all those in number 5, every 5th student, please come forward. Or everybody who was born on June. Okay. For stratified, for example, there are different year levels. I will get 5 students per year level. So it goes higher and higher. So first year 5, second year 5, third year 5, fourth year 5. For multi-stage, I have to select 2 variables. For example, I have to specify, I want 5 male students. So what are my variables? They have to be male and they have to be 5 per level. For cluster, I have to group them. Okay. For example, in a 42%, I want to get 30% of that number who are male and then 70% who are female. And then afterwards, I will just select from the 30% and that 70%. For non-probability sampling, these are the following: convenience, purposive, quota, and snowball. Okay, for convenience, I just select who is available. For example, I go to a barangay and I want, my criteria is they should be geriatric. I'm studying about geriatric people. So I go to a barangay, I see an old person, I already ask him if he's willing to be interviewed. So convenient because I readily saw that person. If purposive, it has to be criteria. There should be at least 3 criteria. What are the criteria? For example, he has to be female. He has to be male. He has to be within 50 to 60 years old or 60 to 7 years old. And then, lastly, he has to reside in Barangay Zulueta. Now, sometimes, if you can't think of a final and third criteria, last criteria or criterion should be the participant should be willing to participate. So always 3 if it's purposive. And then quota, for example, again, Geria, I just need 100 people who are ages 60 to 70 years old. If I get 100, whether or not they're from wherever, that's it. I get my quota. And snowball is taken in together with purposive. The snowball is by referral because they know someone. For example, a prostate cancer survivor. Maybe they know people who have survived prostate cancer, so they can assist you by referring those people with prostate cancer. Okay, for instrumentation or instrument, these are the things or materials that you would use to conduct your data gathering. For quantitative, it's usually a questionnaire or a Likert scale. Okay, for those of you wondering, it's pronounced Likert because the proponent of Likert's scale is what's his name again? Tao po kasi si Likert. So, that's how it's pronounced, okay? Why 4-point? Okay, if you will see 5-point Likert scales, so usually that would be highly agree, somehow, sometimes, or basta yung the middle one is always sometimes. So sometimes if your questionnaire is quite long, tatamarin na po sumagot yung mga tao. And then, because tinamad na sila, yung gitna na po ang checkan nila out of just to answer your questionnaire. And then, the results would be inconclusive. That's why we should always use 4-point Likert scale. Okay. For qualitative, it's usually interview. Okay. Open-ended, meaning the questions are not answerable by yes or no. Okay. There are different types. Structured, meaning you already have a set of questions that you intend to ask. However, some panels may argue that you will become biased because you already prepared your questions beforehand. That's why we make use of a semi-structured interview, which are just guide questions that you only use if the participant mentions or answers those questions. Because the follow-up question should be based on the response of your participant. Then last, yung unstructured, you only have one grand tour question. And then, based on their initial response, that is where your follow-up questions will happen. Application called SPSS, wherein we compute for Cronbach's alpha. For qualitative, ang tawag po sa rigor ay trustworthiness. So, credibility is achieved through audit trail. So, together with your advisor, they follow your step-by-step procedure. Likewise, when you write your paper, if we are able to redo the paper based on how you narrated, how you performed your study step by step, it is credible. It is dependable because your interview should be attached at the appendices. So, and then also the reliability, again, your interview is there, so meaning you really interviewed the participants. Okay. Then lastly, confirmability, it's called member check, wherein you go back to your participants, you ask them to verify, did you really say this? Is this what you really said? Is this what you meant? And then when they say yes, you've achieved confirmability. For the data gathering procedure, always start with asking for permission from the dean and then obtaining consent from the adults. And then, ang tawag po sa pag-ask ng consent sa minors is assent. And then lastly, you go proceed to your survey if it's quantitative and then interview for qualitative. For the analysis, these are the different analysis you may use. For statistics, we have descriptive and inferential. Pag descriptive, ito po lang sa kaliwa. Percentage, frequency, weighted mean. Then, pag inferential po, yan na po yung may mga computation. We have t-test, ANOVA, chi-square, correlation, and then regression analysis. Madami pa pong iba. So, depende po yan sa inyong statistician. And lastly, qualitative. Pag narrative, we interpret based on what was said. Pag thematic po, we make themes. And then qualitative content, we interpret based on what is written. So, ang tawag po sa data analysis in terms of your capsule, when you write it down, you just say if it's quantitative, I will make use of either descriptive or inferential statistics. For qualitative, you have the choice for narrative, thematic, or qualitative content analysis or QCA. Then when you cite po your bibliography para po wala tayong plagiarism, please list all resources that you use, arrange them in alphabetical format, and use APA6 format. For example, ito po. For the author, nakaspecify po siya, align left, and then yung second and succeeding lines po ay naka-flush left. Any questions? Thank you.